Welcome back to Srochi and the King, episode 3. We are back for another week. Apologies for the slow start, at least if you are watching live on YouTube. We are starting at 5:30 Eastern Time instead of our usual 4 o'clock slot. But that means that our good friend Adam King doesn't have to roll out of bed at the crack of dawn. He got an opportunity to get a morning cup of coffee and, get energized for the day and for the pod. So, Adam, how's it going, man? How are things over in Australia with you?
Yeah, pretty good. Kids are back to school today for the first time in what? Oh, there they go down the stairs. Yeah, back to school for the first time in about 10 weeks, I think. Alan's dropped out. I know he has some issues with his laptop, and that's why we were sort of slow to get going this morning. So all good over here, but I mean, I'll wait for Alan. I do know what we were going to talk about, but he has the graphics for the show. But I'll get things going because I'm sure there are a few people watching live. So the first story we were going to touch on this morning was just to do with the Lakers and their 0-2 start. So they do play again tonight against the Grizzlies, which will be a good test. It's in LA, but the Grizzlies have looked really good so far. Again, it's only early. So look, everything we talk about on the show today, you need to be putting it into a bit of perspective because we are still really early in the season. So yeah, look, I mean, we're going to give you some information and advice as we always do, but you take it for what it's worth, given the small sample size. So with the Lakers, yeah, look, I'm not too concerned really. I mean, we were expecting teething problems for the Lakers, and this is not a situation that's sort of isolated when you look at these new super teams or super teams. I'm not sure you would count Westbrook as part of a super team, just given where he's at. But I mean, we saw with the Cavs. I remember when LeBron sort of went back, they struggled a bit. When he went to the Heat and they had their big three, they struggled a little bit to start. So chemistry is a big part of. Oh, there's Alan. So
there I am.
He's back. So I'm just talking about the Lakers. I just moved on to our first story.
That works.
Talking about the Lakers and their start. There we go. So, I was just saying, look, I'm not too worried about it. They haven't looked great, but we've seen this before with teams that are bringing such strong personalities together, where it takes them. I can't remember if it was the Heat or the Cavs. A few years ago that started sort of 13-13. And that was, I don't know if it was the Heat when they brought LeBron over to join Wade. And they were really, and people were panicking and, this isn't going to work and that sort of thing. And look, it did end up working. So I'm not saying the Lakers are going to win this season by any means. They could, but yeah, I'm not too worried about it. But I have to say that the incident on the bench was pretty funny. I mean, I know it's been talked down, and they sort of said they've talked it out, and everything's good. But I don't know. Like Dwight Howard and Anthony Davis are both pretty opinionated and believe in who they are and stand by their beliefs. So I don't know. It was interesting. What did you think about that?
I think it's just. I mean, look, first of all, this is a team that is filled with, all-star level egos, right? Like these are, this is, all these guys have either been through the LeBron Lakers system before, or they're a little bit new to things like Westbrook, and there's going to be a lot of growing pains both on and off the court. The Westbrook stuff was already kind of telegraphed from the get-go that this fit was just going to be, this would be one of the most challenging fits in both LeBron and Russ's career, those two figuring out how to play alongside each other. This start's not surprising to me, both in terms just like with all the expectations and like how it can maybe lead to some with some of these vets. That Westbrook just doesn't look at all really suited for that role from the get-go. He's going to have to. It's going to be a second half type of thing, I think, for him as he learns a little bit how to play off of. That's really how he's going to have to in here. Yeah, there's been talk about maybe bringing him off the bench. We all know that's never going to happen. Running that second unit, maybe we'll see them staggered a little bit more going forward, though. But the losses definitely highlighted some of these spacing and fit issues that this team is going to encounter early on. It'll be interesting to see if they can figure things out though against a Memphis Grizzly team that's talented and competitive, but not to the same degree as the Warriors and the Suns. It'll give the Lakers, I think, an opportunity to really sort of dictate the pace of the game and maybe get back on track. So remains to be seen.
Look, I think something that's been overlooked a little bit is just the fact that although they're not huge pieces, the Lakers are missing a lot of their shooters at the moment. And so Westbrook is being forced into a role that he may not have to play as much when they have Ellington on the floor, when they have none on the floor. It's just going to give them some perimeter options. At the moment, they're sort of down on troops, so Westbrook is perhaps playing minutes off the ball that he wouldn't be in a sort of even an ideal situation. So, because if they continue running him in the role that he's in, it's shooting is not a strength. We know that. So they need to get him out of that role and get the ball into his hands a bit more. So that could happen when they get these fringe guys back.
Yeah. It is, interestingly enough, a lot. And I mean, the youth that they brought onto their roster are the ones that kind of gotten hurt and broken down early on. A lot has been made about this Lakers age, like the age of this team and how that could lead to some injury concerns. But Talen Horton-Tucker, Malik Monk, Kendrick Nunn, they've all had injuries out the get-go here. And Nunn and Monk in particular, alongside Wayne Ellington, those three really will. They have outsized roles in importance for this team going forward. So we will, it's going to take a long time for this Lakers team to figure it out, but they still have as high a ceiling as any contender in the league, just from a pure talent perspective. You can't count guys like LeBron out in any real scenario. Anthony Davis has been a bright spot. He has looked really good. He looks healthy this year. He's played a lot of center compared to years past. So I think that he is going to be, I think he's in for a big year, both in real life and as long as he stays healthy. It could be in fantasy as well. I mean, the free throw stuff's still kind of weird, but that's
that's he was better. Yes, was it yesterday, day before? Yeah. I think he was a bit better. And I don't know. One thing I do notice about Anthony Davis, and perhaps this has been happening all his career. I'm not sure. Maybe I just haven't sort of picked it apart as much, but he never really looks to be enjoying himself on the court. Like some players look like they're having fun. Yeah. He always just looks angry or stressed or
uncomfortable, almost like strained a little bit.
So I don't know there's a lot of pressure playing in LA, playing next to LeBron, and expectations are always high. So whether that's just gotten to him a bit, I don't know. I mean, it could be nothing. And as I said, maybe he has been like that his whole career and just hasn't had that spotlight on him. But just watching him, he looks, I don't know, he looks like he's not happy or that's probably not what it is, but don't seem smiling a lot.
Well, thankfully he's got those warm personalities on the bench to help cheer him up, like White and Rajon Rondo,
and that's right,
and all those guys. So predictable but noteworthy drama in Lakerland early on. We will revisit them at some point, surely down the road once they start figuring some things out. But let's talk about some guys who have figured some things out pretty early on, maybe even to a surprising degree, and that's this rookie class. Just in general, we've seen some impressive stuff from the rookies early on. They were touted as one of the more talented draft class in a while, headlined by guys like Cade Cunningham and Jaylen Green, who, Cade hasn't played and Green has had his struggles, but it's been a lot of these other guys. Like Evan Mobley has looked spectacular in his first two games. Very versatile, like reminiscent of guys like Karl Anthony Towns, like the shirt you're wearing right now. Anthony Davis, just a guy. The versatility has been on display early on. Chris Duarte for the Pacers has looked really good, as has guys like Davion Mitchell defensively in Sacramento. Scottie Barnes in Toronto has been fantastic. Adam, what do you make of this class so far? I mean, do you feel that – why don't we just look at it just from a fantasy perspective first? Because I know we're going to dive into some of these guys in our main segment today. But do you feel like this rookie class has a higher ceiling fantasy-wise than some of the other ones we've seen coming in lately?
Yeah, look, I think obviously that rookie wall is going to come at some point. Things are going to slow down. It is only sort of 2 games, and I did emphasize that when you left us earlier in the show there that this is a really small sample size. Like everything we're talking about today is based on less than a week, so you do need to factor that in when making decisions. But yeah, look, they've looked really good, and I think for a few of them, it's just the fact that their role is a lot bigger than we thought it might be. So Mobley, we thought he'd be good, but we didn't think he'd be playing 35 minutes a night starting initially. We thought it might be Jared Allen and Lauri Markkanen starting,
which it was, but not
which it was
not exactly how we thought it would go.
Now it's Markkanen at the 3 is still weird. I don't know how long that lasts, but Duarte has obviously benefited from Karis LeVert going down.
Right.
So his role could scale back a little bit once he's back. So I think some of them have just landed in a really nice situation to begin the season. But in saying that, they're a talented bunch. Davion Mitchell is averaging 2 steals a game, which is sort of, that's as he was advertised. He's going to be this defensive stopper, and all of the feedback you hear, whether it's from his teammates or from opposing players, is that he's a pest, and he is what we thought he would be, and he will end up being sort of a top 5 wing defender, guard defender in the league. So, no, look, I've been really impressed. And Scottie Barnes is another one. He's obviously playing really, really big minutes, but we've got Boucher hasn't hit his straps yet. Whether he does, I don't know. But Siakam is getting close to a return. Sounds like he's started taking some limited contact in practice, so he's probably 2-3 weeks away. So that will impact Scottie Barnes. But no, look, it's been impressive, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think to me, it's just a lot of these guys have been as advertised. I think that just general prospect scouting, both from the professionals who do it to just like that, NBA draft Twitter, like some of these people that you'll follow, it's getting really good. These guys, a lot of these player evaluations, they, again, small sample size, but they have nailed early on. A lot of these guys are fitting into these roles exactly how you would expect. And like you said, Scottie Barnes and Chris Duarte in particular, really taking advantage of these openings that they have. Franz Wagner's another one who, without Chuma Okeke and Jonathan Isaac, has gotten opportunities to play decent minutes, and he's been pretty good, better than summer league and preseason, that's for sure. So I really liked what I've seen from a lot of these guys. Mobley to me is still the one that he might. It's still early on. One of my biggest offseason whiffs so far, it looks like, is I thought that he was just going to be too undersized, and just the weirdness of playing out of position was really going to limit his NBA, production early on. But unfortunately, I missed him in a few spots that maybe I could have drafted him otherwise. But he looks like he could be, as far as fantasy purposes is concerned, a lock for top 100 value this season. The defensive stats and the rebounds, the percentages are great. He's getting it done as a passer, which Cleveland can really use as much as they can need, just playmakers in general on that team. He's someone I'm fascinated by and can't wait to watch more of going forward. And then, like we said, Cade Cunningham is still, he's the headliner. He's still out. He has that ankle injury, sort of a nebulous sort of, I guess there's no real update on his timetable, because we've gotten mixed signals, because they've said that it's not serious and they're just being cautious, but they also throw very concerning phrases around, like no timetable to return, which just could mean that they have that doesn't necessarily mean it's a severe ankle injury. But Detroit, they have an MO. They're not trying to be competitive necessarily off the bat. Maybe they could. I don't know. But the Cade situation is just, I don't know. I want to see him soon because that Pistons team, certainly with how Killian Hayes has performed thus far as the lead guard, I'm sure they could use an injection of some just playmaking or shot creation of any sort from that guard spot. And obviously fantasy managers who drafted Cade as that first rookie are probably waiting to get him involved into the mix as well. Any thoughts on Jaylen Green? I haven't gotten to watch any Rockets games, and I mean, please don't blame me for that, because why would I subject myself to that? But have you noticed anything about kind of his slow start so far? Is it more just that the Rockets are terrible and this guy is a shooter and needs playmakers and, I don't know, good teammates to help him out, or is it just kind of like the shot's just not falling yet?
Yeah, look, I think it's a bit of both. I'm just pulling up his stats. So, yeah, so far he's averaging 9 points, 3.5 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.5 steals. So defense is nice. So if he can get close to 1.5 steals, then that's really nice. 3 to 4 assists is going to be fine. It's really the scoring. And we knew coming in that scoring was going to be where his value came from. And at the moment, he's shooting 32% on almost 13 shots per game. So, look, that'll get better. I'm not sure he gets over 40, maybe 41. He's going to be one of these guys who just shoots the ball a lot and maybe doesn't get a lot of them to go in. But he'll have a green light. He'll be. So I think he'll be. He'll be a standard league player. All the way, I think. He's just going to be up and down because his value is going to be really reliant on that scoring. He'll have nights where he scores 8 points on 20% shooting, and then the next night he might score 26 points on 60% shooting. He's going to be really up and down, I think. So, look, if you drafted him, you need to be ready for these kinds of runs where he just struggles. But I think he'll balance that out with some really, really nice performances as well.
So, yeah, I think that we'll start to see him heat up at a certain point. He could be one of those March saviors where he really starts getting into a groove, maybe getting 22, 23 points nightly. And that's where he'll really shine for fantasy managers. We had one more story, but I think that we have a little more. We've touched a lot on some of those already, so we'll just kind of go right into our main subject for the day. And that's waiver wire ads. Everyone wants to over or underreact to the small game sample size that we've seen so far. And it's really hard to separate facts from fiction. So Adam and I today are going to go through a large list of players that we've seen added in Yahoo leagues, 9 category leagues specifically, get questions about a lot on Twitter, and just really kind of make what we feel could be a long-term case for these guys, or a just blip on the radar. These strong performances that we've seen to start the year aren't that sustainable. So let's start, and we're going to go in order of roster percentage on Yahoo. So we're going to start here. These are targets that are either on your wire right now in a standard 12-team league, or might have been scooped up this week. You might have them on your team and might be interested in some analysis on them. Let's start right with our first one right here. The rookie Chris Duarte in Indiana is, there he is, right up on the screen right there. Chris Duarte rostered in 65% of Yahoo leagues so far, with averages of 20.3 points per game, 3.7 threes, and a steal. He's shooting 40% from the floor and is about averaging an absurd 39 minutes per game through his first 3 games. Indiana's had some overtime in there as well. We can right off the bat tell you what's not sustainable from that line. There's no way that Duarte injuries to that Pacers front wing rotation or not, he's not playing 39 minutes nightly. But you touched on it, Adam. Like, he's benefited from Karis LeVert being out of the lineup with that lower back injury, as well as a guy like TJ Warren. He's missed, he's still out with that foot injury. I think Justin Holiday missed a game in there as well, that the first game of the season. And Jeremy Lamb has been on some minutes limit because he's dealing with a wrist injury. So Duarte's really gotten this shot, this opportunity by default, but he's absolutely capitalized on it. I mean, he's been good. I'm not trying to minimize any of that. The question, I guess, that we should all be asking is, what's real, what's not about this run? So, Adam, I'm going to start with you. Do you feel that Duarte has a case for top 100 value even when some of these Pacers come back? Or do you think that this is just sort of him capitalizing at this this void at the position?
Yeah, look, I mean, as you said, the 39 minutes, there's no way that's sustainable. I think they had an overtime game, and the first their rotations have been quite shallow. So that's going to come down, obviously, which will mean his stats will come down. I think the steals are probably real. I think he's going to play enough to get 1.2, 1.3 steals per game. He seems pretty confident from the 3-point line, so I think he'll be a steady enough 3-point contributor. The points will come down from 20. I think he's probably more around the 13, 14 mark once all is said and done. Look, does he have top 100 potential? I think so, probably, just because the Pacers seem really confident in getting him out there. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's ceiling it. Like, I don't think he can be a top 50 player or anything like that, but I think he can certainly finish inside the top 100. So if you picked him up, I think he'll be fine to hold on to for the rest of the season. I would say the next week or so, if he sort of keeps it going, if you want to try and offload him for a top 50 player, that would be something to consider, because I think probably this first 2 weeks, until we get word on LeVert, I think this is probably his ceiling in terms of production. So, yeah, that would be the time to let him go. But that said, I mean, if you've picked him off waivers and you can get a top 100, top 90 player for the season, then you're already ahead. So that would be fine too.
Yeah, I think that he's definitely worth holding on to, even when Caris LeVert, especially when Caris LeVert comes back, because that's the period where you're going to have to assess, how he meshes there. I think what he's shown so far, though, is that he is one of the better spot-up shooters on this team, regardless of who's healthy or not, and that alone should give him a runway to continue competing for minutes. Like, Jeremy Lamb would be that other guy, but I don't think he's a part of their future plans, like, really at all. They might be just trying to find a trade partner for them this year. And look, Duarte was someone that I liked as a sneaky kind of like, I thought that he was going to get it done with solid percentages in like steals and threes, because that was what his game was in college. He was a very efficient player from the line and the field, low turnovers, steals and threes numbers. I was not expecting the scoring explosion that we saw out of him early, the high usage stuff. I think that there is some upside for him in different ways once that usage goes down, and he's still getting those 3-point opportunities, and he still has those steal numbers, like you mentioned. And those percentages, I think, could even up to getting to the high, like 40s range. And that could, in a 9 category league, he's proven himself to be a valuable player for these guys already. And I think that he'll surprise you, I think, as we go forward here. So definitely a hold. Obviously, just take into consideration that what we're seeing right now is heavily tilted towards these large minute shares. 20, I think he's had like a 20-shot game in there somewhere along the way. That's not going to happen. I mean, we've seen like that. This Pacers team is wacky. I mean, Miles Turner going for 40 the other night too. On top of that, there's a lot of interesting lines coming out early. But I do think that Duarte has a real 9-cat appeal the rest of the way. Here's another guy that I threw in here as well, just because this is a win for the hoop ball contingent, and that is we're gonna start with Sean Tate, who's also been a hoop ball guy in the past. I thought we were gonna talk to Anthony Melton and just kind of have fun with that for a little bit, but Sean Tate, another interesting name here. He's rostered in 64% of Yahoo leagues. The other night, Houston's only played 2 games so far. The first game, Tate started at small forward, only played 20 minutes and did nothing. The second game, though, 16 points, 14 boards, 6 assists, and 2 steals. He might have even had 2 threes. He might have had a steal in there as well. That second line was awfully reminiscent of what we saw him do last year. It appears that he has the inside track to that starting small forward job going forward. How do you feel about his 9-cap potential, though? I mean, because he's, again, a lot of value that Tate received last year was at a small ball 4. He's not playing that position really much at all this season because Christian Wood has moved up to the 4 for Daniel Tyson, Alperen Şengün to sort of slot in at that 5. I mean, we'll see him here and there playing some of those backup 4 minutes, but what's real and what's not with Tate? Do you think that this line here is more indicative of the stuff, and not this line specifically, because if he's averaging this for the season, he's probably the number 1 player in fantasy, but is Sean Tate going to in for another season of averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 boards, 3.5, and maybe a little over a steal per game?
Yeah, look, I think it's real to some degree. I have a feeling that we're going to see lots of lines like this against the Thunder this season.
That's a good point.
Because they don't look great. So Christian Wood, I think, had 29 and 15 or something. Kevin Porter had 20 and 9. So I think there's going to be some big numbers against the Thunder. So I think just take that into consideration. But yeah, look, I mean, Tate is part of what they want to do. He's still really young. I think his rebounds probably take a little bit of a hit this year. I don't think he'll be up around the 7 mark. I think he'll be closer to 5, just because they have got Tice there and Şengün there. They're just going to have other bodies crashing the boards. So, but I think he can still be sort of double-digit scoring with 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and a steal and a half, 1.5 threes. Reasonably efficient because he's not a high volume guy. He's not going to shoot. He's not like a Duarte who's going to shoot 20 shots a game. He's going to generally be down around the 10, 11 shots. So, again, he's not a guy that has top 50 upside, but he could. I think he probably hovers around that top 100, top 120 mark all season. So that's fine to have on a 12-team roster.
Yeah, no doubt. Especially if that usage being low is also a bit of a benefit to Tate, because he is a guy who, he's been expanding his range a little bit, but he's a very high field goal percent type of wing player. That's an interesting source of value for him. He definitely helps fit into those builds where you might be heavily invested in big man stats. And I think that he does have a capacity as well to get to that steal and a half mark per game, just so long as he's out there for at least 30 minutes a night, which it seems like he's got the inside track to doing. Now, Daniel House has not been with the Rockets at all in these first 2 games, and he's not a part of their long-term plans, but he does sort of float in and around as just a guy who can siphon off some playing time at those forward spots, as does Eric Gordon to a certain capacity. Tate he feels younger than he is because he was a rookie last year, but he is 26 going on 27 this season. So he's not necessarily built into their long-term plans either. But I do think that he makes more sense with this younger unit. So I have a high hope that he can stay within that top 100 range this year myself, and definitely encouraged from that line against OKC. It'll be nice to see him go up again. I think they play Boston tonight. So, it'll be interesting to see. They play a non-OKC team tonight, so there will be.
They play Boston, yeah.
Fantastic. So he'll have a defensive assignment against Jason Tatum. I don't think Jaylen Brown's playing, so we'll see how much he's utilized in tonight's game. As we go forward, those minutes are just going to be very critical to watch, because he's going to be starting, but he's going to be floating in and out of that, those rotations depending on, I don't know, just kind of where these Rockets are in these games. So another interesting name to monitor. Here's the name that I was, that we're all very excited for. Anthony Melton, full-time starter. D'Anthony Melton, maybe not full-time, but so far he has been in that starting lineup with Desmond Bane, with really just pristine averages here, 21 points per game, really high field goal percentage. 3-pointers have been going in at a very high clip. He's been getting it done, and he has yet to contribute in the area that he's almost known for more than all these numbers right here, is the high steals and blocks numbers. He's rostered in 62% of Yahoo leagues right now, so you probably have missed the boat if he was floating out there to start the season. But what is your expectation for Melton going forward? We're waiting for Dylan Brooks to come back to this lineup and jumble up the rotations in some capacity. But assuming that Melton still hovers at, say, I don't know, let's call it 23 minutes a night, do you think that he's still locked in as a top 100 guy in non-cat leagues?
23, I think he'd be about there, top 100, top 90. I'm hoping it appears as though they've finally got some confidence in having him out on the floor. It looks like he's drastically improved his 3-point shot, so his offense isn't holding him back now. I'm hoping even when Brooks comes back, he's closer to 28 minutes, 27 minutes a game. And if that's the case, I think he's top 60 sort of player. And as you said, the defense isn't there yet. And whether that is because he's just been really focused on that offensive side of his game. So once Brooks is back, that might actually help in terms of Melton's defensive production. He can focus a little bit more on that. But yeah, look, you probably have missed the boat. It's highly unlikely that he's available in any leagues now. And yeah, look, I guess we've been sort of preaching him for the last, I don't know, 3 years. It feels like forever, but fingers crossed. Yeah, the confidence is there from Taylor Jenkins now, and moving forward, he's an integral part of the rotation. I'm not. I don't know if he starts when Brooks is back. It's going to be interesting to see where Brooks fits into all of this now. But yeah, look, top 80 for the rest of the season, I think is pretty realistic.
While we're here too, I don't think I actually added a slide for him, but Desmond Bane's been another popular waiver target. He's starting alongside D'Anthony Melton and has been equally impressive in his own right. Averages around 20 points per game. The 3-pointers have been impressive. My hesitation with Bane from what we saw out of him last year was that he really just proved to only be a 3-point specialist. Unlike Melton, who, I mean, we've yet to see it so far this season, but Melton is an across the board contributor, whereas Bane, he's shown some flashes in the passing department, and I think he had 7 rebounds the other night. But as of right now, he's a top 100 player. I'm curious what I imagine that he sticks in that starting lineup when Dillon Brooks comes back, and Melton probably shifts to the bench. Do you feel that Desmond Bane is still a 9-cat option once that happens, or do you feel that do you share some of my concerns that there might not be enough just from the 9 categories perspective to really hold value long term?
There is a bit of concern because, as you said, his value is tied a little bit more to 3-point shooting and scoring. But I think he'll be close to a steal a game, and his rebounding will be okay. As you said, I think he sticks in the starting lineup as well. I think Bane. So it's sort of an odd situation because I think Bane's role is actually a bit more secure.
Yeah.
But Melton has more upside per minute. So
yeah,
while Bane might play more minutes than Melton still has the higher upside. So yeah, I think as we said, Melton top 80 is very realistic. For Bane, it's probably more like top 100. Top 110 is sort of best case scenario when Brooks is back. I mean, the hope from me is that they scale Brooks back because I don't think he's their best option there. But from what we've seen the past couple of seasons, they like him, and so they'll probably have him on the floor more than what we would like him to be on the floor. But yeah, I think both can have standard league value the rest of the way. And I drafted Bane in quite a few spots, so I'm hoping that that what I'm saying is right and that he does stay as a top 100 player.
Well, Brooks is definitely going to come in and play a lot. They do value, he's a bit of a shot chucker, but they do value his defense, even if it doesn't show up that much in the box score. He is considered to be one of their better defensive options. Although so is D'Anthony Melton, but that's. I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So that's sort of the wrap on the Grizzlies guards. Let's talk about Ricky Rubio a little bit, who has so far Cavaliers have played 3 games. Rubio has 28 assists, which are second most in the NBA at this point. 16.7 points per game in 29 minutes. We already sort of know that some of this stuff is a little unsustainable. That first of all, I mean, Ricky Rubio has an average 16 points per game. He might have done it at one point of his NBA career. It's not going to happen again for a full season anytime soon. He has played a lot of his games too without Darius Garland. I think 2 of the 3 games that Cleveland has played, Garland has missed. So Rubio has been their starting point guard for some of those games as well. But even in that first game when Garland was in and Rubio was coming off the bench, I think he still had 9 assists. His passing has been very valuable for this Cleveland unit. And I guess the question that we need to ask is there full season value for Rubio when Garland is in this lineup full time? Like, do we still think that Rubio is going to be one of these guys who can get you 6 or 7 assists even in a bench role?
Yeah, look, I think so. I wasn't really sure, like when he moved to Cleveland, what's his role going to be exactly, because we knew they had Garland and Sexton there. But I think it's pretty clear, and just from what you hear from inside the team, they like having him out there on the floor as a veteran, mentoring these young guards. He's formed some good chemistry already with Mobley and Jared Allen. And yeah, I just pulled up the game log there. So in that first game, and that's the one we probably need to look at because that was the one that Garland played in.
Mm-hmm.
He had 25 minutes, 12 points, 10 assists and a steal. So he's not going to get 10 assists every night, but I think you could probably safely say he's going to get 6 assists and probably a steal. They're his 2 strengths, obviously. But he's also hit 3 threes in every game so far. So that's an element of his game that potentially he's worked on. I mean, he's not going to hit 3 3-pointers a night, but if he can get you 1.5 to 2 3-pointers most nights, then that gives him a little bit of extra value. So initially I didn't think so, but I would say now, even when Garland is back, if he can play 25 minutes a night, which I think he will, at least until they start actively tanking, I think he can be a top 100-ish sort of player. And as we've seen, if Garland goes down or Sexton goes down, and both have had their injury worries in the past couple of years, then Rubio just steps right in there and sort of bumps himself up to be a top 60, top 50 player pretty easily.
Yeah, I think that what I was encouraged the most by in that first game, and I think they did this a little bit in the preseason too, is that Garland and Rubio did share the floor together at certain junctures. It's not just a straight splitting of the point guard minutes between the two. And that's really just the one area that you need sort of secured to have Rubio become that 9 category useful player. Like the Cavaliers are clearly putting an emphasis on having shooting throughout this roster. I mean, with having Lauri Markkanen in that starting lineup as the small forward is all the evidence you need of that. And I think that they value that. Rubio has shown an aptitude to stroke it from the outside so far this season, which allows him to play next to Garland. But he's just also really great when you give him shooters. He's just adept at finding open man on catch and shoots opportunities, and he knows how to put guys in the right positions. I think that he's a big part of them increasing as a team, their 3-point output. And he clearly has a larger role than just this veteran backup point guard. So I think that, once again, this is another guy, Garland or not. Even with just how assists are so scarce in 9 category leagues too, he's going to hold some value going forward. Temper expectations, obviously, but because, again, what we've seen so far has been a little outside the norm in terms of the scoring stats for Rubio. Like, typically old dogs don't learn new tricks like that at this stage of their career, but ride it while you can. The assists, I do think, will be pretty real going forward, though, and that's obviously the key point to take away. Here's another guy, another point guard in a new situation. Eric Bledsoe for the Clippers has had a very impressive start in LA. In his first 2 games, he's played over 30 minutes. He has a total of 5 steals, and his usage rate has gone up to 22.6. That was a bit higher than his 18% usage rate that he had in New Orleans last year. He seems more engaged, a little more reminiscent of the Milwaukee Bucks version of Eric Bledsoe, but he burned people pretty bad last year. So I feel like there's some hesitation about how reliable some of the stuff is that we're seeing him doing right now. Not necessarily in the scoring department, but I think just like the Eric Bledsoe we're familiar with, who can get you 4 to 5 assists and about a steal and a half or so per game. What are your thoughts on Bledsoe so far in LA? Do you feel that he has this starting job locked down and that he's going to maintain this usage rate going forward?
I think so. Him and Reggie Jackson have been playing big minutes, both of them, and there isn't really anyone there to take that playing time away from them at the moment. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, look, I think his role is real. What he's done over the first 2 games is probably not as real, but in saying that, I still think he'll be better than last year, which isn't hard. I mean, you have to say he didn't look engaged last year. As with, I think we've seen exactly the same with Steven Adams this year. He's moved away from the Pelicans and he looks far better this year for the Grizzlies. So, look, I think top 120, top 110. He isn't the player he used to be. He's not that young. He's not that old either, but he's still going to get you 5 assists and at least a steal. that in itself is valuable enough. And then he'll score a bit because they don't have Kawhi, and Paul George can't do it all. They don't have a center who scores, so they need points from other places. And Bledsoe, we know he's not a big 3-point guy. I don't know how many threes he's got so far. Have I got his games? What's he got? Almost 2 a game. So, yeah, look, he's not a big 3-point shooter, but he has the ability to get to the basket. He always has had that ability. So he's probably just a half a step slower than he was 3-4 years ago. But that ability is still there. So, yeah, look, I think he's another one who's probably for real, and he's probably going to be a standard league guy this season.
Yeah, I'm in that boat too. I think that I think just from he just fits a little bit better in this system. Just the guys around him. I mean, the Clippers run lineups where there's really just all shooters out there, which gives Bledsoe an opportunity to get downhill a little bit more and be a little more of a setup man and less of a creator, which I think he was asked to do a little bit too much in New Orleans, but then also just he didn't really care all that much. That locker room was lost very early on with Stan Van Gundy, and this is definitely just a better fit for him. And like you said, he's not an older player. He's an athletic. He's a guy who relied on athleticism for so long, so he ages in NBA terms a little quicker than everyone else. But if he can get to himself to about a steal per game, or maybe like a steal and a half per game this season, I think that's kind of somewhere in that range. I think that'll be what will get him over the hump in standard leagues. So that's kind of those are some of the big names that are probably no longer on wires. These guys are a little bit lower. Might still be out there in some of your leagues. Precious Achiuwa is an interesting name. 40% rostered in Yahoo leagues. He's averaged a double-double so far through 3 games with the Raptors, 10 points and 11 boards, 25 minutes a night. I am interested by this one because he obviously is seen as a sort of a building block for Toronto. They acquired. He was someone that he was the main person that they wanted to acquire in the Kyle Lowry trade. They got Goran Dragic too, but I don't think that he's slated to be there all that long. I think the question is he able to maintain this minute load as Chris Boucher ramps back up into shape once Pascal Siakam comes back into the fold and Scottie Barnes is maybe sort of forced into, this Raptors team is so versatile, so many options who can play these center minutes. Do you feel that Achiuwa is realistically going to be able to hold down this role? Because I'm a little skeptical.
Oh yeah, look, I'm probably sort of on the fence, I think, because Kem Burch is the other true sort of pure center option that they have, and he hasn't done much so far. I mean, let's be honest, he's been pretty ordinary. He was decent enough to end last season, so I think he's still sort of, and he missed preseason and that sort of thing. So Burch will take a little bit of time to get back up to speed. Same with Boucher, and Boucher. I mean, I think as we saw last year, like Boucher was sort of a bit of a fantasy darling last year when he played those big minutes and he was putting up top 20, top 30 numbers for stages during the season. And then Nick Nurse would just play him 15 minutes inexplicably, and managers would sort of be sitting with their arms up. So what happened? Why did he play 35 minutes and then 15 minutes? And I mean, there's no real answer for that other than the fact that Nurse potentially doesn't have a lot of trust in him, and he's not confident playing him big minutes. So, and I think we saw yesterday Boucher only played 8 minutes in the game. So
some pointed comments towards him from Nurse at the end of the game too, saying that he just needs to be better, flat out. So he's calling him out already.
So I don't think that confidence is there. So I'm not sure Boucher sort of lives up to the hype this year. I mean, it remains to be seen, but I think of all these guys, Achiuwa is probably the one with the clearest path to centre minutes of those 3. So 25 minutes a game, I think, is probably achievable, even when Siakam comes back. I think from what we've seen, it would be more likely that Burch and Boucher get scaled back. I don't think Achua will get. I don't think he's going to be a 30-minute a night guy unless he really steps up and improves over the first month. Yeah. But in 25 minutes, he's a double threat. He'll hurt your free throw percentage, but and I don't even think he probably hasn't had a lot of defensive.
That's kind of my thing with him.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's I don't think he has, and he didn't really have many in Miami last year either. No. He's really yet to show that upside in the defensive stat category. And when you're a big man, that does make your path to 9 cat value pretty complicated. Like, you can't just be rebounds and field goal percentage. Like, you got to be able to contribute at least in some capacity with the steals and blocks as well, especially if he's not out. Because like, he's not a stretch big by any means. He doesn't get involved in the passing game. A rebound specialist is fine and valuable. And in 25 minutes a night, I bet you that he could probably get somewhere in the neighborhood of like 8 boards per game. He's proven to be a very effective rebounder in the NBA, but I'm just not sure if he might be one of those guys that surprises you in having a pretty low 9 cat ceiling when you look at his full stat line at the end of the day. It remains to be seen. It's still early on, but I do think that you make good points that Boucher has always kind of been in that Nick Nurse doghouse. He wants to find different options. I think if he had his choice, he'd want the center's position to be a little bit more of a competition than it has been in the past. And Achua, to his credit, has made it an interesting one thus far. Even when he comes back, there'll be some questions to answer there about who absorbs a lot of those minutes. But, for now, keep riding him, especially if you got a need for rebounding. His 11 rebounds off the waiver wire is not very easy to find. And again, I don't expect that to hold up, but for the time being, he does have enough runway to continue contributing in that particular category. Cam Reddish of the Atlanta Hawks has been another interesting waiver target of 19.5 points per game off the bench, 48% shooting from the field. To Anthony Melton, he has yet to start contributing in the steals department, like we've seen, which is kind of what he's known for. What are your thoughts on Cam's start to the season so far? Are you buying the shooting in the fantasy value to this point?
I know. I mean, you would have a better idea of this one, being a Hawks fan and probably a little bit more invested in their beat reporters and that sort of thing. But from what I hear and read, they like him. I think and so they want him on the court. He burned me last year a couple of times, so I'm a bit jaded. I picked him up once or twice, and then he sort of let me down. I dropped him, and then someone else might have got him. So, but he did have injuries last year, so I think that needs to be taken into account there. He's more of I think his value is pretty reliant on his scoring. So he does need to be scoring the ball to maintain value. I'm not sold that he's a standard league player all year. Yeah. The Hawks are just so deep. I think you'll have a stretch of a week where he's a top 100 player, but then if he cools off, they can easily just throw Kevin Huerter in there if they need to. They've got Lou Williams to come back, who can come off the bench and score 15 points in 12 minutes sort of thing. I just think if he's struggling, they don't need to keep him out there. So he'll be up and down, and when it's all said and done, I'm not sure he ends inside the top 150. What do you think there with him?
So for the positives that I can say, Reddish looks better this year than he has in years past. I mean, like, the offense, the shooting has been his biggest weakness as an NBA pro. It's been incredibly inconsistent, but the shot's been going in at a very high rate. He's looked confident while doing it, and he's been closing these games for Atlanta too. I mean, they've been like, Dallas was a blowout situation, but he was in with the starting lineup with a lot of those closing minutes. Clint Capella's on a minutes restriction, so the Hawks went smaller, and maybe that gave him another avenue. But the thing is with Reddish is, I mean, these numbers are tough to rely on because of that how much he's burned you in the past with the lack of consistency on the shot. If he's not getting you, if he doesn't have those steals included as well, that is not a floor that I'm comfortable investing in. Just that he's going to shoot 48% or somewhere in that neighborhood all year long. I mean, I'd love it if he did, I'm not really sure if that's his game. There's no real scenario where he's coming off the bench where he's coming into the starting lineup this season, unless there's an injury. Like DeAndre Hunter pretty much got that starting small forward job locked down. I'd be shocked if Bogey would move out of that starting lineup from the 2 spot as well. And like you said, like the depth is going to make it to where if Reddish doesn't have it going one night, then you just go to Kevin Huerter or you go to Delon Wright. Like, there's too many options off that Hawks bench that could get hot and make it easy for Nick McMillan to just pull the plug on a guy early if the shot's not going. So he's very risky to go with in 9-cat leagues, though he does look good. I mean, this could be the year where he's going to compete with Kevin Huerter a lot more than I thought he might have for those 6-man minutes this season. And injuries, should they pop up, he does become a much more appealing option. But again, this stuff that he's doing right now is very reliant on the shooting being sustainable, and that's just not something we've seen in his career so far. So proceed with caution in that respect. We have a few more guys to get to here before we get to some of your questions. We'll probably wrap it up after maybe 2 or 3 more of these names. Alex Caruso, 27% rostered in Yahoo leagues right now. Big spark plug player for the Chicago Bulls. He's been a fan favorite as a defensive ace. 9 total steals and 3 blocks in their first 3 games. Decent shooting percentage from the field. 3.3 assists. He's getting it done in small all across all across the box score. What do you make of Alex Caruso so far? Do you think that there's a path to 9-cat value with all the usage that's being dominated by that big 4 in Chicago, or does he even need shots to get there?
I don't think he does. So I wrote about him in my column last night. So he's actually the 26th ranked player this season, despite only scoring 8 points a game. So a little bit Robert Covington-esque in that he doesn't need the ball in his hands. He's going to get you some assists. He's sort of there running that second unit to some degree. And he'll get steals and some blocks. So that's what he's going to do. I think for me, the most encouraging thing is his role. He's averaging 27 and a half minutes a game. So unlike with the Lakers last year, I think his role is pretty locked in at sort of, I would say, 25 minutes at minimum, and up to 30 on some nights. And if you don't need scoring, I mean, he's not going to be the 26th ranked player. We know that. But I just think he'll give you some of those sort of under the radar stats, and could sort of hold some 12-team value all season. And like Covington, he's not going to be for everyone. He's not going to fit. It doesn't mean if he's there, you grab him, because if you need scoring and you need rebounding, he's not going to help you there. So he's going to fit certain teams. But yeah, I like his role, and he was even getting MVP chance when he was at the free throw line the other night. He missed the free throw, but
every element of that story shouldn't surprise anyone.
No, he's really well respected. He's already viewed as the team captain. When you hear them talking about it in commentary, and Captain Caruso and that sort of thing, and so he's obviously really well liked by the coaching staff, by his teammates, and by the fans. So if they didn't put him on the court, I think there'd be a riot in Chicago, because they really like having him out there. So no, I really like Caruso for this year.
Yeah, I like that Robert Covington comparison. I think that's actually very apt in terms of like how you assess fantasy value with Caruso, because he just does enough outside of like shooting the ball to help you out from a fantasy perspective, and that's what makes him such a great fit for this Bulls team in terms of just an outside potential fantasy guy. Like, people talk about Patrick Williams as having that potential upside as starting 4. Also doesn't need usage to come across some of his fantasy value. But Chicago, just by the way they're constructed, they're going to be playing small a lot this year. They're going to bump DeRozan to that 4 spot and Levine to the 3. And then that'll create an avenue for guys like Caruso and eventually Kobe White, once he gets healthy, to, play a lot of minutes. I mean, I think that his role is both off and on the court very secured for this Bulls team. He's a talented guy. The memes in LA were there was some credence to them. You know, it wasn't just, you know, Lakers fans gushing over the guy who looked like a math teacher and could make some hustle. You know, Caruso really a lot of things that you like, a lot of elements to his game that you like as a basketball coach and as a fan. And it'll be fascinating to see how he maintains this role going forward. I think that did
we lose Alan then? No, are you back?
Yep, I'm back. Yeah.
You're
so
back.
What I'm gonna before we lose myself again here, I think we're going to why don't we dive into some fantasy questions here? It seems like my computer is hanging on by a thread. We got some other waiver wire targets to get to, but you know what? We can also save that for week 2 because it seems like this is going to be a pretty popular segment going forward. Why don't we start answering some of your questions, though? If you haven't dropped any into the chat, feel free to do so now. We'll get to as many as we can. There's no guarantee we'll get to yours specifically, but we'll start with Jack, who opened up the stream thanking us for the show. Thank you for tuning in, Jack. We really appreciate that. He's asking if there's any updates on Norman Powell, who suffered a pretty scary-looking knee injury last night. From reports from Adrian Wojnarowski at that time, the team believes that he's avoided something serious. But to my knowledge, and Adam, you could correct me if I'm wrong, there aren't any more updates out there from Norman Powell. I don't think that he's going to be out for the season, regardless of what those updates are. But I do think that he could be looking at some time off, at least a week, maybe more, going forward. So I guess from that end, is there a fantasy basketball ad to make in the absence of Powell? Should he miss a considerable amount of time going forward?
No, look, I mean, it's hard to know until we actually see what lineup they run with Powell off the floor. Based on what they did last night, I think Nasir Little moved into the starting lineup, and he's been moderately impressive. So he would probably be the guy that I would at least take a flyer on. We don't know exactly what his role is going to be, but I think he could nudge 30 minutes, and in 30 minutes he's got to do some stuff. So he'd be worth a look. I'm hoping Larry Nance gets a bit of a bump, and they actually sort of use him as a bit more of a versatile forward. He hit a 3 last night, so he can step out and sort of threaten from out beyond the perimeter. So they're probably the 2 at the moment. I guess Anthony Simons makes sense maybe as a guy who will step into a larger role as well. And in terms of updates on Powell, I haven't heard anything else, but avoiding serious injury basically just means he didn't tear his ACL. If he's got an MCL sprain, that could be a month. It's really hard to know with a knee injury like this until we actually get some clarity on what he did. Because we've seen, like, Boucher did something, an MCL or something, and missed a month last year, and I think we saw what Giannis did to his knee last year in the playoffs. That was scary. He missed 3 games?
He missed
a
game. Yeah,
a game.
Unbelievably,
game,
yeah. I mean, he maybe like 1 or 2. But Giannis is built a little bit different.
He is, and this is a different situation. Obviously, the Raptors probably aren't pushing for a championship this season. So Giannis probably shouldn't have been out there, but was. So look, I would think it's probably at least a week to 2 weeks, but could extend up to 6 weeks. It's really hard to know. And hopefully we get some clarity today, because I have him on a couple of teams. I need to know what to do with him.
Yeah. Well, I think you made the right call in that there probably isn't an ad to make, in that this, if anything, from a fantasy perspective, could be a bigger deal for Larry Nance Jr., who could absorb more minutes at the 4, with Robert Covington likely slotting in to play more small forward minutes. Nasir Little being the potential guys. So that's kind of where I'm looking there. We will obviously keep our eyes out for any potential updates on Powell going forward. Michael McBean has a couple of questions. We'll start with this one on Gary Trent Jr., which I can't seem to pull up.
Yep, the question's there. I can see it. So,
Adam, Yeah, there we are. There we are. Okay. Gary Trent Jr. Great steals through the preseason. Had first 3 games chances he averages a steal and a half. I must say probably not, given what we've seen from him historically speaking. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think 1.5 is probably a bit of a reach. I think at least 1. Just again, if he's out there, he's going to get a steal a game. So I would say probably 1.1, maybe 1.1, 1.2 steals a game, which is it's not elite, but it's not nothing either. It at least adds another element to his overall game. So he's not just completely reliant on scoring. And yeah, no, look, I think 1.2, 1.1, 1.2 is a nice realistic target.
And that would probably be the avenue he would need to capitalize on the most to get to 9 cat value, because we do know that Trent can be a little bit of a points leaguey type of player with the poor percentages and kind of want him. So
Might have lost Alan again. Let's see if he comes back this time. Maybe not. All right, I'll run over a couple of these questions. No, there we go. You're back. Maybe.
Oh, was I out? I feel like I'm losing. I might be in a tough spot here. I'll tee up some questions, Adam, and then you can go ahead and answer them while I try and figure out my connection issues here. But Jay asked this question. Is that on the screen from about Brook Lopez being off waivers?
Yep.
So yeah, from this group list that he has in front of you here, Bane, Melton, Barton, Barrett, and Maxey. You dropping any of those guys for Brook Lopez and 9-cat?
Only if you need blocks. If you don't need blocks, I wouldn't get Brolo. If I had to pick one to drop, it wouldn't be Bane. It wouldn't be Melton. It probably wouldn't be Barton. I'd probably be holding those 3. It'd be Barrett or Maxey. Barrett, you're only really holding if you need scoring. He could get 18 points a game, but he doesn't do a lot else. Maxey, I'm still not sold on Maxey. I think he'll get minutes and he's been okay. So they would be the 2 I would consider. But again, it would only be if you need blocks, because I don't see Lopez doing a ton this season.
And final question here from Kevin. Thoughts on Kelly, Olynyk, and Şengün? To give you the best answer, Kevin, we'd probably need to know your league format in settings, but why don't we just frame this from just a 9-category league perspective, Adam? Şengün is got a lot of hype, very interesting fantasy game to him. Olynyk is more established. They're both backup bigs for. I still got you there. Yeah.
No, yeah, you went out, but you're back now. So Olynyk, look, Olynyk, I've seen him dropped in a few places because I've had people asking me, should I go and pick him up? I would still be picking him up. Again, in my column last night, I wrote, this is what Olynyk does outside of what he did in Houston last year, which is one of the sort of, I think in 10 years' time, it's going to be an urban legend of how good Olynyk was for that month in Houston. But generally, this is what Olynyk does. He'll be really good for a week, then he'll do nothing for a week, then he'll be good for 2 weeks. So I would still be holding Olynyk where possible. And Şengün, he hasn't been awesome, but he hasn't been terrible either. So his turnovers haven't been good. I think he had 7 turnovers in his last game. And I only know that because I have him on my team, and I wondered why the hell my turnovers were so high. I'd be holding Şengün as well if you can, because I think he'll just get better as the season goes on. Houston will give him more minutes when they start tanking.
I would like to give my input here and there. Oh, there I am. Adam, can you hear me still? I think we're gonna have to end this stream before I lose you entirely. Everyone, that's our show for today. Technical difficulties aside, I hope you enjoyed our program. Please check us out on YouTube going forward. You can find us, Srochi and the King, on Apple Podcasts, wherever other podcasts can be found. We will check in with you guys again next week, and best of luck going into week 2. Adam, it was great checking in with you. We will check back in with all of y'all next time.